Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Historical Commission meeting. It's Tuesday, June 18th, and right now it is 6:37. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Can I please have a roll call?
Carrie Ash, clerk.
Joyce Rodriguez, present.
Richard Mancini.
Connie Soul
Ruben Amaral.
Patty Riddell.
and Kristen Cantara Oliver. Okay, first on the agenda under general business, correspondence. So I received a letter from the city clerk, and it's a resolution from the city council regarding the Nathaniel B. Borden School. And the item is being referred to the real estate committee, and I'm going to read the letter out loud. Whereas the current owner of the former Nathaniel B. Borden School on Morgan Street has filed for a permit to demolish this historic building, and whereas the filing of this permit has triggered the City of Fall River's so-called demolition ordinance, which delays demolition for a period of 6 months, and whereas this delay is intended to consider any and all options which might prevent demolition of Fall River's historic properties, and whereas the Preservation Society of Fall River Incorporated and other preservationists are pursuing alternatives to the demolition of the historic property, and whereas the City of Fall River, through votes of both its real estate committee and the full city council, voted to sell this property with the intent of the new owners utilizing the building and the adjacent parking lot. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fall River City Council calls on its real estate committee to convene with representatives of the city administration, the City Historic Commission, the Preservation Society of Fall River, Inc., and the current owner of the aforementioned property or his designee to discuss any possible alternative that might prevent the demolition of this historic downtown Fall River former school building. In City Council, May 28th, 2019, adopted.
I'd like to make a motion to take 7B out of order on the agenda.
Okay. I have a motion to take 7B out of order.
I second it.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so on the agenda is the intent to demolish, which is 45 Morgan Street, which is the Nathaniel B. Borden building, which I just read to you about. And I know that it obviously has generated a lot of interest in the community, and I mean, we've received a lot of input as far as wanting to preserve the property, and I know that the Preservation Society has also received a lot of buzz and feedback about wanting to save the building, as well as it being brought up to the City Council. So what I'd like to do is read the letter that we did receive. I was in receipt of it on April 18th, 2019, which started the 6-month demolition delay. And so at that point, I sent a letter, and I'll read you the letter that I sent. So what we received from Kevin Santos, who's the owner of 45 Morgan Street, regarding Nathaniel B. Borden School. Dear Commission members, I write to you today in regards to the above referenced property. In 2012, we purchased the property with the intent of renovating the existing abandoned N.B. Borden School for the purposes of either residential apartments and/or office commercial space. In 2014, we applied for and received a zoning variance, allowing the subdivision of the parcel, leaving the existing building on one parcel to be utilized as office space and storage warehouse while creating a parking facility for our adjacent restaurant on the second parcel. We have invested well over $100,000 in repairs/upgrades and have currently completed approximately 80% of the parking facility. Over this time, we have worked extensively with our engineer, architect, and several contractors in an attempt to develop the property with the intent of leaving the structure standing. As with many of the sold school properties in the city, the restoration/reuse of the structures is very difficult, and the cost of such makes the projects economically unfeasible. The cost to complete the needed renovations was estimated to be approximately $3.5 million. The estimated cost of demolishing the building will be approximately $400,000. We are often approached by residents in the city regarding the project, and most request to have the building raised. Additionally, it is becoming more of a safety concern for the neighborhood the longer the building sits vacant. It is for these reasons that we are requesting a permit for demolition from the City of Fall River Building Commissioner. The demolition of the property will allow for the completion of the parking facility, as well as the potential of residential construction along a portion of the Whipple Street frontage. Thank you for your time and attention regarding this matter. Sincerely, Kevin Santos. So that was the letter that we received, and the letter that I sent. Dear Mr. Santos, Fall River Historical Commission acknowledges receipt on April 18, 2019 of your request to demolish the buildings on the property located at 45 Morgan Street in Fall River. Because the property is listed in the Fall River Register of Significant Structures, there's an automatic 6-month demolition delay. This delay will be in effect until October 18, 2019. Fall River Historical Commission respectfully requests the opportunity to meet with you to discuss possible alternatives to demolition of the property. Our next scheduled meeting will be on May 21st, 2019 in the City Council hearing room, first floor, 1 Government Center at 6:30. If you have any questions, you can reach me at, sincerely, Kristen Oliveira. So, he had originally agreed to come to the meeting for May, and then at the last minute said that he was not able to make it. He did agree to come to this meeting, and then yesterday said that he would not be able to make this meeting either. So as of yet, we have not had a conversation with him, and what he did say to our clerk was that any questions that people have can be answered in the letter that he sent. And that's the letter which I read to you, which I know myself, and I'm sure other people have many more questions than can be answered in that letter. And so that's where we're at right now as far as the process. So I know last month we read the position statement from the Preservation Society. And I know we have some members here that did have some things that they'd like to speak about as well. So I'd ask if anyone wants to come down. Just, do you want to read it again, the statement from last month?
No, we have some other things. Thank you very much for the opportunity to let us speak tonight. My name is Jim Soul. I live at 577 Rock Street in Fall River.
And I'm James Souza. I live at 300 Stetson Street, Fall River.
And I'm Alex Silva. I live at 649 Alden Street, Fall
I'm
River.
also the Vice President of the Preservation Society.
And so we appreciate that you allow us time to speak, and I suspect there may be some other people in the crowd who might want to speak separately. I'll keep my statements kind of brief. I don't really believe that we're going to be able to convince Mr. Santos to change his mind. I hope we can. I hope we can. I hope we've made a stir, and we've shown him that there is interest, despite his suggestions that he has more interest to tear it down. I don't think that that's true. So I'm hoping that maybe we can have an impact here. If nothing else, though, I would say that maybe we're going to begin to have an impact on the leaders of the city. because I firmly believe, our organization firmly believes, that this organization, this push for preservation needs to start from the city level, not from just our local developers, but from the administrators who run the city and set an example. It's the city leaders who sold Mr. Santos the building to begin with, knowing that it was an historical, iconic building, but not requiring a deed restriction, a preservation deed restriction or a reverter clause. What we have tonight is something we've never done before. The first time we've done this, and I think it speaks volumes. In Mr. Santos's original purchase, he had a nice little petition that showed, I think, 19 friends and neighbors who actually supported his proposal to save the building. Well, we've got another 800 plus signatures that we've garnered in less than a week from neighbors in Fall River, most in Fall River, but amazingly dozens from across the country as well, saying how important this property should be and should be saved. What I want this message to go to is not just Mr. Santos, the owner. I want it to go to the leaders of this country, of this city. I want it to go to the mayor of this city. I want it to go to the zoning in this city. The people who lead the city,
Planning department.
the planning department. I want them to see this. This is what the people of Fall River want. We need to set that example. They need to lead by example from the top.
I think accountability is a big part of this. There's many issues I think that are important here. Historical preservation of the building for its age, for one thing. The architectural features to the building. The location of the building is a great feature also. The accountability is a big part of it on the city side as well as on the buyer side. I mean, the original intent was to preserve this building. I mean, he purchased it for $5,000. I've seen on social media people saying, well, if the Preservation Society, why didn't they go forward with submitting a proposal and doing that? Well, they received, the city council allegedly received a proposal that seemed valid, and they at the time had the funds allegedly to do that. So the unaccountability on the city council or the real estate committee side is a problem that needs to be rectified, and it just can't continue. And Jim's correct, is that like moving forward, hopefully, even if this building does come down, that the city will be more cautious on how they dispose of properties that are owned, and just not let them go to whoever. I mean, it'd be great to own a building for $5,000, sell it 10 years later and make $400,000. That's awesome. Anybody in the city would have been loving that deal, you know. So the accountability is a big problem, and that's all I'll say about that.
And I'd just like to, I mean, it's a pity that Mr. Santos couldn't be here to share with us some facts about his ownership of the property in terms of his attempts to develop it. But over the course of, since the announcement, we've been trying to kind of gather some facts for ourselves just so we can kind of put together a timeline. We know that the property was sold by the city to him for $5,000 with that promise, not written in paper, to preserve the building and try and convert it into apartments. We know in 2014 the ZBA agreed to split the property into two lots, one being that front Morgan Street parking lot portion of it. So it's in hopes that if the building could be saved, it would still help alleviate the rightly deserved, it's a true issue, parking in downtown. But since the parcel is split already, there is possibilities, hopefully, to kind of do both, save the building and promote parking in that area. We know that there was a $400,000 mortgage taken out on the property. There's been claims that work has been done on the property, but we can't speak to that just because we don't know what's been done on the property. When he agreed to purchase the property in 2012, the Herald News article has him saying that he was prepared to spend $500,000 on the property. We know that if you check the city's assessments on the property, that from when it was purchased in 2012, the building was assessed at $541,900, whereas last year the building was assessed at $15,100. So hopefully that has been helping with property taxes. But we also were just curious what other alternative funding sources he pursued to preserve the building. CPA money is available. I don't believe any applications have been submitted. The building's on the National Register of Historic Places as mentioned, which qualifies it for historic tax credits. So if Mr. Santos would be willing to appear before the commission or the public and just discuss with the community that he's stated that he cares about deeply, well, hopefully we can all work together and help him pursue some of these alternative funding sources to help save the building. Or with the petition, our intent was to show support for his original proposal to save the building, which is the community he's been mentioning. So that's it.
I mean, I also look and he's allegedly redeveloped the parking lot to be a parking lot. With that building coming down, it's not a massive building, but how many spots is it really gonna make? Like, is that really gonna make or break the downtown parking problem?
The most extra, just so I can speak to that, doing calculations, the calculations that I was given to figure that out, the maximum, without even factoring in any kind of like coming in, coming out, like the absolute maximum based on the size of that building and the size of parking spaces that are allowed would be 31.
So, I mean, is that gonna make or break the downtown parking problem?
So you're gonna.
To destroy that building?
Yes.
Like, I don't think so.
31 would be.
Like,
the
I would
absolute
almost bet there's some other spot that you can find 31 parking spots, if that's the reason why they want it.
And parking is an issue that's affecting the whole downtown area, not just that section of downtown. It's something that the city's new downtown urban renewal plan talks about. And it kind of leans towards different solutions towards the parking
And
problem.
Speaking of that too, is this part of the city's master plan in general? It's something that was written, and is it really followed? So that's even another issue that you can add on top of it all.
Well, that's an issue that we've had all along, is the city doesn't follow its own master plan, because in the master plan, historic preservation is very important, and it speaks to that, but the city doesn't follow its own master plan. One of the things I know Alex had said, he had taken out a $400,000 loan, and that was in, I believe, January 2016?
The mortgage was in 2016, I believe,
Okay.
early 2016.
So what he says in his letter is, we have invested well over $100,000 in repairs / upgrades. I'm not sure what repairs and upgrades they've done, but, and they took out a loan for $400,000, and he said he invested over $100,000 in it, and that was in 2016. They got this loan, but he doesn't have any money. But I did actually check with the building department, and there were no permits taken out to do any work on that building, either through building, through electrical, or through plumbing. So if he did any work on there were no permits that were taken out, or there was no work actually done on the building, because there is nothing on record with the building department. So, I mean, these are questions that I know personally I have. I'm sure other people have questions as well, and he's not here to answer these questions, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to, hopefully, the board, the commission's gonna ask the real estate committee to convene a meeting.
I actually am going to.
Yeah.
I did reach out to Councilor Camara, and he said that there was nothing scheduled as of yet, but I want to reach out to Councilor Pelletier, who chairs the committee, to ask him, and we will do that. Since we are discussing this, I want to open it up at this time to anybody else that would like to come down and speak about this. Do we have anybody? Please come down. Just please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Hello, my name's Zachary Borges. I live at 21 Beatty Street in Fall River. I'm running for city council, so hopefully, if all goes well, I can be a part of a good direction change. I can't speak to the testament of Mr. Santos's intentions, but good intentions only go so far. And from an outsider, I want to know if there were any ramifications kind of put in place beforehand for the promises that he'd made, if they weren't met, if there was any real retribution or anything.
Unfortunately, there were not. And this is one of the things that we want to discuss with the real estate committee when we do meet with them, because there's nothing in place for these things. And he did, he had an actual proposal with pictures and his plan of how he was going to do this, and nothing was followed through. But since there's nothing that's in writing, there's no preservation deed or restriction, I'm not sure what alternatives we have at this point, which is why we need to meet with the real estate committee.
I think just like in general, moving forward, across the country, smaller communities can benefit from this. Put in place kind of standards that wealthy investors or people that have the money to put in and let a property sit, put in requirements that they have to meet, or else they start getting fined, or the property will no longer be theirs, or whatever it is. Because there's not really an incentive for people to get the job done and done efficiently if they have all this extra time and
there's no
Absolutely, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
that's all I have to really say about this scenario.
Thank you.
No,
Thank you.
no problem.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak?
Yeah, it's now I'm hot and heavy. And I don't like getting hot and heavy.
All right.
Well, that might be a good thing, though.
Yeah, it's a good thing. It's Arlene Career Pies, and I live at 120 15th Street, and I own a condo. He put in the Herald News that he spent and put a new roof. How can you put a new roof and not pull a permit? And he only spent $100,000, and you pull a loan for $400,000. When you pull a loan for $400,000, the bank, if I'm not mistaken, asks you what you're going to do with the money. Am I not right?
Correct.
So what did he do with the money? It's a scam. He took the money, and he doesn't want to fix the building. You can't have it both ways. You can't get a building from us taxpayers for $5,000 and not fix the building, because this taxpayer is not letting you get away with it. I want the building for $5,000, and then I'll go and get all the money from all these places that's going to give it to me, and I'll fix it. End of story. All us taxpayers will all go and we'll get it for $5,000, and we'll fix it. He's a scammer, and I'm saying it on TV, and I hope he sees me. You're a scammer. You scammed us taxpayers. You promised to fix it, and now you're not going to fix it. That's not right. We gave you a building for $5,000. You can get CPA money, you can get National Historical money to fix it, and you can get, they're fixing all these mills for these low-income apartments. There's no excuse. If they're giving, the state's giving money, the federal government's giving money, why can't you go get it? You just scammed us out of a building for $5,000. You let it sit there for all these years so you can get a parking lot. Who you kidding? We're not stupid. I was born at night, but I wasn't born last night. No, and I'm Portuguese, and that Santo's name, you ain't fooling this Portuguese. No, that ain't gonna work. And remember, he bought TA Restaurant. Does he want to stay in business? Because a lot of Portuguese people are gonna wake up and not go to your restaurant.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay,
Actually, could I say something?
absolutely, no,
Oh, okay.
absolutely, now please go right
I'm
ahead.
just curious that, something else I read in that article, which was quite illuminating, it was about how at least one bidder for the school strongly questioned whether all bid applicants were playing by the same rules. So there was
I
even
read
at
that
that time during the bid process, there were already people questioning
Right,
what the intentions were, and there obviously was something going on.
right.
So that's, I don't know how we could ever find out more about that, perhaps the people that, I wasn't here at the time. But another thing that I'm quite curious about was one of the competing bids, which obviously was for a lot less, but the proposed purpose would have been so amazing for Fall River, and it would be so cool to have that now, would be to have this community and educational center with a glass walkway connected to a performing arts, like,
It was gonna be connected, I believe, to the Capitol.
yeah, in
Theater
what
building.
world was that not a good idea? Especially since
It
just
was.
this amount of time ago, was not that long, New Bedford was doing some renovations of its own in downtown and whatnot, and they built this amazing infrastructure based on creativity, community, and somebody just gave it for apartments and a parking. Like, there's a much bigger systemic issue going on here. Like,
Well-
way, just, people have like their own agendas going on.
Again, this also goes back to something that Mr. Souza said about there not being any accountability for decisions that are made, but also not following the master plan. I mean, the master plan promotes cultural and arts events and buildings and historic preservation and all of these things, and building up the downtown and that.
Maybe people would go downtown if they had something like that, and then they would really have a parking problem if people actually went downtown for something like this, because I don't know, the parking problem I see is all to go to the courthouse, and that's not the kind of parking problem we really want to have in the city.
It's not.
So that's my issue. And I think downtown could be beautiful. There's no reason why people shouldn't be going down there for entertainment, and I think it was when I read that, I was really like, that is
I
such a miss.
know, I said the same thing, but
Such a
because
miss.
they didn't offer as much money. And then somebody else offered a lot more
Yeah.
money, but it was, they kicked that out because they weren't going by the as-is, because they wanted to have somebody come in and actually look at the building and.
You know, I just think
do an
it's, I guess
assessment and
sometimes
that,
it, you know, exceptions can, we're all about, or I'm not gonna say the general we, people can pull out, well, it's not by the book and this, but then on another respects, it's like
They don't
loosey
look,
goosey.
yes.
So it's just like, you know, you either follow the law or you don't follow the law, and it's clear that some people haven't been following the law.
Right.
So, I just think it's really, really sad that we don't have that, and we don't have more people realizing that not only would you be investing in the local economy, you're investing in the people who live here. We don't need more apartments that people can't afford,
Right.
so.
And we're gonna invest in something that's gonna create maximum, which probably won't even be 31 parking spaces
That's a
to
real
knock
shame.
down a historic building.
Seems like his agenda though is potential of residential construction, which is the most worrying part of this letter.
But it said, exactly, it said potential.
And I mean, I don't feel like he's exhausted all of his options.
He obviously hasn't. If he hasn't looked for CPA money, if he hasn't contacted Mass Historical Commission, which I don't know, because he's not here to answer questions. But I mean, right there, 30% tax credits. And for him to, so in his letter, he said, as with many of the sold school properties in the city, the restoration/reuse of the structures is very difficult, and the cost of such makes the projects economically unfeasible. That is absolutely not true. We have people right now in the city that are redeveloping some of the old schools. So it is not economically unfeasible, it's just a matter of doing the work to find this
But
out.
did he not
doing
think it
your
was
due
economically
diligence.
unfeasible in 2012, or is that suddenly become super?
I don't know.
Okay, because that's just, there's a lot of like wordplay, and I think, you know, I'm so sorry, I don't remember your name.
Arlene?
He didn't pick the right contract, he didn't pick the right people. He wanted to, not personal Portuguese, he wanted to go the cheap way. Sorry.
Yeah, I think he's, you know, trying, I wouldn't use that word specifically, it's not my word, scam, but definitely there's some wording being used.
Well, I
different ways.
think what concerns me is not pulling any kind of permits
Well,
on the
that's- yeah, that's
property,
very
claiming that there was work done, but not having any permits that were pulled on the property, and then talking about it being unsafe, where he's talking about, you know, it's not safe in the neighborhood, but part of the reason why the building is unsafe is because it's filled with junk. If you look inside this building in the windows, you can see it's just stacked with junk. So right there is a problem, and I'm not really sure why that problem's never been addressed. I mean, it's one thing, maybe he did receive a variance for storage, but I think there's a difference between storage and filling something with junk, and now you have made it a hazard by doing that. But I mean, again, there's a lot of concerns that I have. I'm sure my fellow commissioners have concerns, and
Absolutely. I think to Mr. Sewell's point, it's really, I mean, we can't do anything about this, that's, you know, it is what it is, because
It's
that's the ordinance we have
unfortunate,
in place, we only have the 6 months, and that's all we can do, but I think it's really more about letting people know that stuff like this goes on. We all know, we all talk about it, and it's just all talk, and there has to be action behind it. There has to be,
Right.
I mean, that's, you either change or you just continue to fall into the same hole every time. And it's the same situation.
one of the comments that I've seen people make online is, oh, should we save it just because Lizzie Borden went to this school? No, not just because Lizzie Borden went to the school, but because of the history and the architecture, and it's a beautiful building. They just don't make buildings like this anymore. However, the fact that Lizzie Borden went to this school really is a draw. And for some of you people that may not be aware of this, there was 2 times in recent years the Preservation Society had an event in the city called Lizzie Borden Cradle to Grave Tour, and it was a free event that they put on, and they had a trolley that went around to all of the different locations in the city that had to do with Lizzie Borden from her birth to her death. And those tours, even though they were free, and I'm gonna say they were sold out, and they weren't sold out because there was no charge for it, but they were sold out, if you will, because there were people that wanted to go on the tour, and they had 2 each time that could not because there was so much interest in doing this. And I know I took the tour myself, and it was amazing, and that building was on the tour, and people love to see this. And I think part of the other issue with our city that we're not doing right is capitalizing on the fact that we have Lizzie Borden, and people say, oh, it's so morbid, it's so morbid. You have Salem. Look at what Salem has done in one of the most morbid things in our history. And they've capitalized on it, and people love it. And I know from my own personal experience, I was a tour guide at the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast one year, and there were people coming from all over the country and even all over the world. There were people from England, and we had people from Scotland and people from Australia. People all over the world know about Lizzie Borden and are fascinated by Lizzie Borden. And even the people, I've looked at the petition that the Preservation Society did, and there are people from all over the world that signed it because people know who Lizzie Borden is. And they do care. So when people say, oh, should we preserve this building just because Lizzie Borden went to school here? Yeah, why not? Because it really is a big draw for our city, and our city does not capitalize on it. And that's unfortunate, and we could be making money, because that tour, just from your opinion now, because you obviously were in charge of that, and there was no charge for that, but if you had charged a fee for people to do that, don't you think that would have gone really well, and it would be, you know, a little moneymaker for the city?
That tour could go on all year long, because not only were we sold out, the waiting list we had
Right.
was in the hundreds.
And can you imagine doing this at Halloween, like, or even in August when the anniversaries would come about, and people would love this, but
I mean, as
You know,
a
this is so
business,
sad.
as a business owner too, I'm close to the cemetery where she's buried.
Right.
And being that we get business, people come in and like, where are you from? Ohio, Australia, all around our country, Puerto Rico. Why do they come here? To go see the Lizzie Borden grave. So it feeds on itself. I mean, it is a tourism magnet. Businesses are gonna do a little better. I mean, and that's will
Of course.
generate the economy too. It's all connected.
And so he owns a restaurant in the city. If you were a person that went and preserved the school of Lizzie Borden
And
and.
go to your restaurant and eat, right?
Exactly. You can park in the parking lot there because you have parking.
I go to your
Do,
restaurant.
you know, whatever you're saving the building for, and go to your restaurant, because you know what? You just helped save a part of the city.
That's right.
But people
You can
don't,
promote that and promote your restaurant to save time, and there goes your
right?
profits right up the ceiling.
There's so many ways that people are just not thinking, and
Does this property function as something that the owner could get an endowment for? Like if he's actually putting it to use for something that would raise funds for the city, could he invest in an endowment on the property?
There are funds,
I'm not sure.
historic funds that are available
Yes.
for renovations.
yeah, I mean, you can get historic tax credits from the state, you can get CPA funds. I'm not sure about the other program, the CD.
Because that might
Community
incentivize him
development.
to
Save it.
at least dedicate funds that he might have now to put in at a future project. And this property seems
I'm
like
not-
it's kind of a loss. I don't wanna like say that too soon, but
Yeah.
Like a loss out of his mind, but if maybe we bribe him.
That I
Um,
don't know, but, I
in
mean,
that way-
these are all things that,
It's the
you
bank that
know,
gave him the loan.
concerns that we wanna bring up with, when we do meet with the real estate committee, and just to see what
Now, will
else.
he be at that realty meeting?
So, probably not.
So Mr. Santos hasn't come to the table, he hasn't come to CPA, is that correct? You're the president of the CPA?
It's not.
He has not, so he has
That
not looked at it.
Alfred died, because maybe he would've came.
Well, he hasn't
Alfred
looked at any of his
Alfred
options, and he hasn't come to talk to us, and we do have questions, but he isn't here to answer them. And aside from the Lizzie Borden, and aside from everything else, it's a structurally sound building.
It's a nice
He
building.
hasn't said it's not sound.
Right.
He supposedly put on a roof, so that at
That's what he
least
said in the Heaven News,
kept
that he
out
put a
the
roof on.
elements.
That's
So
what he said in the Heaven News, that he put a roof on. So
Yep.
that's what I'm saying, he took, yes, they saying he took a $400,000 loan.
Mhm.
He said to her in a letter he spent $100,000. He said in the Heaven News he put a roof that cost $200,000. So 102 is 3, so.
We don't know, because like
Yeah.
she's saying, he's not here
He's
to
not
answer
here
these
to
questions.
say
So
anything.
we have questions, and unless, you know, until we can meet with him, we're going to have questions. Hopefully, he will be here to answer them, because again, we will be
He
able
ain't gonna
to
sell the building for
point him in the
$5,000
direction
back.
of
Where
where
he's
he
in a hole
can.
for 400,000, because if he sell the building for $5,000, I don't want a building, but I'll buy it for the $5,000, and then somebody take it. Offer him that, I don't need a building for $5,000, but you tell him if he wants for $5,000, you got my name, you know where I live, I'll buy it for $5,000. Not that I want a building for $5,000, but I'll pay the $5,000, and you find somebody to fix it. But tell him it's not worth, tell him I said it's not worth knocking down a building. And does he really want to stay in the restaurant business? I know a lot of restaurant people. Does he want to stay in the restaurant business?
Thank you.
All right.
You know, as an aside, this is
A segue.
a segue, let me get into this. This might be a catalyst in many respects. We've mentioned before that it seems that the culture of Fall River is starting to change, and we're starting to look at historic things and trying to maintain some of our history and resurrect that. And that's good. So maybe if we can get enough emotions here in the city and start to pursue that direction. And one of the things that, as a commissioner, and I've been with the Historic Commission and the District Commission from its inception, we don't have, as a group, as an organization, and we're a Fall River board, and we do not have any authority. None. Now, when you go to other cities, I'm not gonna name some, but there are neighboring cities, when you sit there with their historic board, they've got a lot of authority in what's done and what's accomplished or not accomplished in the buildings and the structures, even to streets and sidewalks and curbs. They're fully involved, and they have a lot of, well, I'll just call it authority over what's done.
Oversight.
Oversight, well, a little more than
Yeah.
oversight, it's a
Well, we'd
little
be happy with
stronger.
oversight.
We have none of that here as a board, and you can see what's happening with other properties just recently that have been destroyed, with recommendations that they not be destroyed. So, you know, we just don't have any authority. So the catalyst is there, it's starting to take root, and if we can get a larger population or more of the people in the city to start giving us a little more support, this might be a good thing.
And it doesn't
So-
have to be positioned as historic preservation, like only as, this is all about community development, about economic development.
Absolutely.
And so anybody who
It
doesn't like,
all
anybody who
goes
doesn't like
hand in
old
hand.
buildings
It
and
does,
who's like,
it
oh,
goes
why are
hand in
you
hand.
doing that? Then do you like jobs? Do you like money? Like you can, there's something in this for everybody for us to do this.
Economically, it is, everyone who's gone in that direction has really generated a lot of economic.
They have. And if you look at the developers in this community who have been involved in historic preservation, they don't generally do just one project. They go on and they do other projects because they know that it's lucrative for them. They know that it helps their bottom line, they make money and it also generates money for the city and it builds up areas that really need building up. And I mean, there's, if it weren't an economically viable project to redevelop historical properties, you would not have developers doing it. And now we have these big mills that are being developed, and you have people that are looking for more of them, because they know, because you have apartments in there, and now there's waiting lists for these apartments. And that, the more we can get this going in the city, the better it's gonna be for the city on so many levels. But any of you that are interested, I really implore you to come to the real estate committee meeting when that happens, just to show the city that, there really is support for all of this. And once
My
we.
question to you, Madam Chairman, is when does that happen? Mr. Santos did not show up last month. And now we have a question, when will he show up?
Well, I mean, I would like to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, hopefully, he will understand that this really is important to a lot more people than maybe he was aware of. And maybe now this will get him thinking, okay, well, maybe I didn't know all my options and now I'm hearing, well, there's this and there's this. And maybe it will get him to the table, I don't know. We can't force him to do it, but I think if enough people are, interested, and obviously, I mean, you've got 800 and something signatures here, and there's probably gonna be more than that. That says a lot. In a week, and you have this many.
And normally, they're normally advised, a letter is sent out informing them that the real estate committee is going to be discussing their property.
Yeah.
And they're invited to attend.
Right,
That-
and will that letter go out before the next meeting of the Historical Commission? Is that a meeting that will take place before the July meeting?
I don't know. They have no scheduled meeting as of right now, so I need to get in touch with Mr. Pelletier, Councilor Pelletier, and ask him if he can expedite this, because I mean, we have until October, and that's not a long time, and
That's
that's
not a long
another,
time.
that's another issue, is even, the limited power that the Historical Commission has is to enforce a 6-month demolition delay. 6 months is not a long time. This is already 2 months gone by to try and get this person to the table to discuss options, and then you still need time to look into those
And I'm
options.
sure he knows that by not, we
Right.
don't come to this meeting,
So,
then maybe we don't
I
have a
mean,
July meeting,
Right, so one of the things we've talked about is to try and get the 6-month delay changed in ordinance to a year, which is what a lot of communities have, and it's what Mass Historical Commission recommends, is to have at least a year demolition delay to give people time for this process, because right now, it's already June, October is 4 months away. We have less than 4 months from today before this happens, so, I mean, hopefully we can get the real estate committee to convene as soon as possible.
I noticed that, well, when that meeting does convene, I think the planning officer, the planning director should be also invited. I see that it's the city administrator, the commission, the Preservation Society, the current owner. What about the planning director? And I would also like to invite successful preservationists to work with Mr. Santos. For example, Mr. Cordero, he's been successful in the city of Fall River. I would like him to be invited. As you schedule that meeting with the Real Estate Commission, I noticed that we have no record of Mr. Santos ever looking for tax credits. He's never gone after ways to raise money to work in preserving this building. So perhaps we can get preservationists who can speak to him about possibilities of reusing the building and ways to do that. On the other side, Madam Chairman, I think there's a clue in his letter of March 25th as to where he's going with this. He talks about a parking facility, but he also talks about the potential of residential construction along Whipple Street. That's where he's going. He's
Of
going
course.
to a potential residential construction on Whipple Street.
Which
And
will,
as you said to me earlier, that is not part of the master plan, and that is not part of the Fall River renewal plan for the downtown area. So all of that, I think, needs to be worked through the Real Estate Commission. I would also ask that Mr. Santos, when he shows up to the Real Estate Commission, or this board, produces that estimate from his architects, the $3.5 million that he says will be required to renovate the building. So I think the Real Estate Commission should be asking for that estimate. Who did it? Where is it? And we want a copy.
anyone else?
Well, hold on, I think my big question is, what can we do in the meantime? Like, do we keep, at it on social media, like, that thing, we don't have much time.
We don't.
And so I just wanna see, I don't know I know we say we don't have much power, but there's power in social media, there's power in petitions, there's power in keeping up the momentum. And so I just think we have to think about what we can do. And that might not be decided right here, it could be something that we think about, but not for too long, of course.
I think just educating the public as to, the
Yeah.
process, the options, why things in the city especially need to change. And I'm not sure, like Mr. Sewell said, I'm not really sure what is, if it's possible to change his mind and I don't know. But I mean, public pressure is a big thing, especially for a business person, so I don't know if we have enough, if the public gets,
Well, I think the media, obviously,
Sure.
Having media exposure, I invite him to have media exposure as well. I mean, when you
Right.
don't show up to something, we only get one side of the story, so. But I mean, I think just put one idea out there, just maybe start, maybe focusing on the positive things, and I've talked about this before, about highlighting the structures or the good developments that have happened, the good historic preservation stories, like our success stories, maybe not ours per se, but people in Fall River, developers who have had success, maybe highlighting those on social media. We could maybe even send that out to some of the local media outlets. I think that's something we should all, within ourselves, maybe try to keep the momentum going as well, because I think the Preservation Society has done a great job.
I think Mr. Sewell gave us some direction
Oh,
on
for
that
sure.
with his position statement. And that is, the lesson learned here is that the city not engage in the sale of historic properties without expecting a preservation restriction and or revert a clause on the deed.
most important thing
How do we
going
get that? Do
forward.
we have to go to the city council for that?
That's gonna start in the real estate committee, that conversation will start with the real estate, no?
You have input.
Yeah, but doesn't it have to start with the real estate committee, because they're the ones that make the decisions on when the sale, and then it goes to ordinance, wouldn't it be?
An ordinance. The idea would be to create you could put it in real estate committee, but that would just be a guideline. If you want it to be a rule, it would be
Oh, I know the rule has to be, but I'm saying our first step is we're meeting with the real estate committee, so bring it up with them, because they're the ones that are gonna be writing.
Preservation Society has requested a meeting with the ordinance committee.
Oh, okay.
In addition to that.
Can we be a part of that conversation? Because.
In addition to that, going back before this school, we have submitted to this administration, this current administration, we have submitted a request for a new ordinance regarding the demolition, the
Delay,
6 month.
yep.
Yes. And we did have a meeting with Mayor Carrere regarding that. He told us, twice, that's correct. He told us it was an ordinance. He had sent it
It
forward.
had sent it.
And he was gonna look to see where it was. We haven't gotten any feedback, or any follow-up regarding that. So it's bigger than this, as some of us have alluded to. It is bigger than this, and we have to find a way to protect, or to increase the demolition delay in the future, but it does start with the ordinance committee.
Well, part of that also is when we're combining, because we're working on combining the two committees. When we're rewriting the ordinance, then that's something that we need to strongly recommend to the ordinance committee and the reasons why. And this right here is a perfect example of why we need more than a 6-month demolition delay. Because, I mean, we get people coming in and saying, oh, I want to demolish, I've exhausted all my options. And they're coming in and they get 6 months and we've never seen them before, never heard from them. We have no idea what options they've even pursued. But they claim that they've exhausted everything and they don't meet with us in that 6-month period of time. So what do they have to lose? They get all their ducks in a row and then they're ready to.
Clearly in this situation with Mr. Santos, he has not gone before the CPA, he's not come before us, he has not reached out to historic tax credits. For all I know, he hasn't reached out to anyone that has succeeded in the city for redeveloping an older building.
But again, no permits were pulled for anything.
Well, and that's really concerning.
That's very concerning.
And so the subdivision of the property leads me to believe that his intent all along was to subdivide the property to perhaps have half the property for himself and sell the other half of the property. So again, he would be increasing, financial gain from it. Perhaps he's in financial trouble. And
Then
that's.
sell the property.
Well, I'm thinking.
But
I'm thinking this is his own resolution.
there's always options.
I mean, maybe the business isn't doing so well and he's trying to do something different, I don't know. But without him being here, we can't ask him these questions.
It's all speculation until we actually can speak with him, unfortunately, and it's very frustrating.
And I know he's co-owner of TA, is he also co-owner of this property?
There were 2 names listed on the.
So he is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. But then when, at some point, it was only the one name. Sorry. Because I know at one point there were 2 names.
Property transferred to him.
I don't think, so Kevin Santos and Fernando Santos were the president and vice president of TA, and that was
that's when they purchased
who it
it.
was sold to, but there were other, but
So
the
when
things that came after that, I thought,
The corporation owns it.
so TA, the corporation owns it, okay. Do you want, oh, thank you. So, anything else?
He's clearly not the right developer. We need to hopefully find someone, push him along to find someone who's the right developer. It's unfortunate. I've only been here a year and a few months, and I've already seen the Thomas Edison building go. And a few other very important
Church.
structures. Yep.
We lost a church, we lost the mill, the Edison building.
Yeah. And this is not one I would like to see go.
Especially just knowing, just on a personal level, seeing how much interest there just is to see every little shred related to Lizzie Borden, and you're just gonna demolish one more piece of it, and to me, it's just crazy. It
Well,
really
there's
is.
the other question, Madam Chairman, I want to add to that agenda for the Real Estate Commission. I noticed that the code on this building has gone from education to parking lot to warehouse. How does that happen?
That was a variance they got.
Who does that in this city of Fall River? Who comes to that?
Zoning board.
The real estate?
Zoning board.
Zoning board.
Okay. So how do we go from a building that was used as an educational facility to a warehouse? Does that mean that that is an easier definition for
I don't know.
demolition?
I know they went before, I don't think it matters one way or another for demolition. I mean, you can demolish a residential as easily as a warehouse. I just think that shows the intent that he had all along, because if you had, if you switched it over to a different zoning at some point, and you're no longer residential and now you're warehouse and parking, I mean, and that was quite a while ago, then what was your intention?
And that definition goes back to 2015, so there's
And in
more.
2016 was when he took out the $400,000 loan. That was after he already got the variance to change it to
Yeah,
warehouse.
there's more than we know, there's more than we know about this. because-
Again, it's all speculation until we can speak with him. I mean, we really don't know. There's a lot of questions and there's no answers, and what he said was all questions can be answered by my letter, and they really cannot be answered by that letter, so. Hopefully, we will get him to meet with us and speak with us, and hopefully he will be open to listening to other alternatives to demolition. But again, as Commissioner Mancini said, we don't have the authority to do it. So all we can do, we can hope that we have public support that will put pressure on him to make the right decisions, and other than that, I mean, we go forward, hopefully working with the city, getting the city to realize why these things are important to have in place, so that we don't end up in this position again, because we don't want to be here again. Okay, all right, so moving on, can I get a motion to go back to the?
Sure. I make a motion to resume the agenda and start with 4A.
Okay, I have a motion, second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on, budgets, expenditures, gifts, and donations, we have none. And open bank account, I haven't had a chance to do that with everything else going on, so, I will have much more time in the next few weeks, so I will come down and do that with Kerry and see what we can get going. And even if we have a bank account, we have no money to put in it yet, but hopefully that'll change at some point. So I know we had citizen input based on this. Do we have any other citizen input, anything that people would like to speak about? Okay. Public hearings and determinations, we have none. 7A, notice of intent to demolish. So Pilgrim Mill, 847 Pleasant Street, expired almost 2 years ago, and it is still standing, and I'm always happy that I don't have to give any other news other than it's still standing. C, 84 Renwood Street, that was a request that is not on the register.
Okay.
And I know that the mayor was gonna be there today. I don't know if he was gonna be at the property, but he was having a,
He was there.
was he?
Yeah,
Okay.
it got knocked down. They had a small press conference and then,
Oh, okay,
Oh, they knocked it
Yeah.
down already? Oh, all right.
I don't know
was
if it's
quick.
fully down, but
yeah.
Well, that's off the agenda.
I mean, it was a house that was built in the 50s, and it was not on the register, and it was not something that we would have put on the register, so, and same thing with 250 Snell Street, again, it's not on the significant structures list, so I did inform them that it was not on the list. Moving on, 8A, request for exemptions, we have none. Advisory review, nominations and revisions to Fall River Register of Significant Structures. We have none at this time, but again, if anybody knows of a property that should be on the list, always keep your eyes open. Check the list to see if something's on it or not, and if not, then let us know, we can reach out to the owners. PowerPoint presentation for neighborhood groups. I have one more scheduled, and that's for tomorrow night. I will be doing the North End Neighborhood Association, and Patty did revamp the PowerPoint presentation a little bit, because I know it was harder to read because of the way that it was done, and so she tweaked it, and it looks great. So we're gonna use the new format tomorrow, and I did add in pictures for the North End neighborhood, so we'll be meeting with them tomorrow.
Is that the Morton?
It's at Morton tomorrow at 6:30, so yep. Yep, so, and I confirmed that today with Dave Jennings, so that's what's up. I don't have any others scheduled, because I know, I spoke with a couple of neighborhood organizations and they're not very active in the summer, so I figured we would kind of take the summer off from doing them unless somebody specifically requests us to do it. And then, maybe
What's
we
the
can-
neighborhood association that surrounds the board and school?
Oh, is it St. Anne's
I think
neighborhood?
it's Sandy.
Probably, or is it, the one where, like, 5th Street and
Niagara?
4th Street and all that? No, it's not Niagara. Don't they have one? Or is that part of St. Anne's? It's the one where, the building was that Jim, you remember the Elks building, and they were gonna apply for CPA? Corky, I think it may possibly be Corky, it's either Corky Row or St. Anne's. I'm not positive, it's one of the two.
I was just thinking maybe that group might need to hear a positive spin on why, historic
You know what,
preservation
let's-
is important, especially at this
Okay.
particular point in time.
I'm gonna find out which, where that is and
I'd be
see
happy to go
maybe.
with you.
Okay.
I also know from some information that I was given that I think that area with where TAs is or very near there is being made into like a TDI, like the mass development is going to be establishing a district around there. I'm gonna look into that a little bit more, because I don't have the exact, I just kinda wanted to put that out there because I think that's gonna add a lot of value to the neighborhood as well. And they really are looking into redeveloping and refurbishing a lot of things in that area. So I think it would be much nicer to have a historical structure than cheap housing, which is probably what's gonna go,
Absolutely.
frankly, that's what's probably, when you raise something and wanna put houses up quickly, that's what you're gonna do.
Well, the other
so.
thing is, in that neighborhood, there really are a lot of historic homes. And I think people forget, because people think historic homes, they're all in the Highlands and or the lower Highlands.
They're throughout
There
the
are so
city.
many beautiful historic properties that are along Ridge Street and Whipple Street and Cottage Street, and people aren't aware of that. And I think if you keep, this building is so central to a lot of those historic houses, so to keep that is just, and you've got the Capitol Theater building, and then they just did all that work in, Alexandria.
Well, absolutely, and I know
stuff,
they've been part of this group
Right.
that's discussing with mass development, this whole TDI area. And I haven't heard anything about parking issues, really, from that. Like, that hasn't been their main,
Right.
that hasn't been guiding their plans, let's put it that
I've
way. It's
never
not.
had a
It's more about
problem with
cultural and engagement and revitalization, and not so much about, I think we need to be a little bit more, well, not we as Fall River need to be a lot more forward-thinking and thoughtful, and not just like immediate fix. Because there are, there are quite, that, when we go past the other side of South Main, there's a lot of like property there that I think would make a great parking lot, actually. They're practically already parking lots, so.
I never see that parking lot full.
It never has been, ever. And that's with the building still standing, so.
I drove by Sunday
Good
and
point.
it was empty.
No, he's absolutely right. The other thing that we could do, besides neighborhood groups, and I think because we're up and running, would be a really good way to present to some of the high-rise buildings, the elderly high-rise, because they don't always get out to the neighborhood groups. but they're so invested in the community. A lot of them were born and raised here, and they're very interested in the historic properties because these are the properties that they grew up with. I mean, a lot of them went to these schools
That's
and
what some of the people in the comments
these other
said that.
buildings, right. And so, I mean, reaching out also, besides just the neighborhood groups, would be to some of the elderly high-rise buildings and even senior centers. And I know Joyce and I had talked about maybe doing something at the Heritage Park.
Oh, yes, that's right.
The
You know,
theater.
I
that's
actually
in
went to
there.
see that exhibit. I just happened to be there for
Wasn't
the
it? Wasn't it
Azorian
great?
whaleboats that came. And let me say, I saw Connie there. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I'm really impressed with that. And
Yeah.
I mean, and the Fabric of Fall River was playing. They were having 2 showings that day. So I mean, really amazing job they did.
Brought in a lot of people. When
Yeah.
we were there that night, huh, Joyce? There was so many people in that. She's not listening.
She's contemplating.
But there really were. There were a lot. I mean, so many people, and so we had talked about that. Like,
That's a
might be
great
a good
idea.
place just to do, you know, over the summer, or well, more in the fall again. But so, I mean, we're still ongoing with that and tweaking it as needed. But it seems to be going well. We're getting a lot of good feedback from the neighborhood groups as we do them, and I know a few of you have gone to some of the groups, and so we're gonna continue to do that. And if anybody else wants to come along or do it, please let me know. So historical commission / historic district commission merger. I met with Kathy Ambiveris and Judge Macy to talk about the merger, because Judge Macy was working on, the ordinance committee had sent it to him for review to go over, you know, the legalities of it. They wanted him to look at it. And so he wanted to know about the wording of it. And, you know, he says, I don't want to do all this and then come to find out that not everybody's on board with this merger. So I told him, yes, we all want to see the merger happen, and I did.
We actually had a vote. Didn't we have a vote? We had a vote
Yeah,
regarding it.
yeah. So that's what, but his concern was that he wanted to make sure that everybody's on board and there's not gonna be like, and even like other community entities. So I said, no, everybody is in support of this, and we talked about, you know, some of the way that it's written and how it would fall on that. So he's working on that, and I think he's trying to get it done sooner rather than later, because he was talking about trying to get it done before the big summer break and that. So hopefully that will be, you know, I'll have more news soon, but I don't know as of yet. I haven't heard anything back from him, but I did meet with him, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. So, so that's it on that. Any other questions on any of those? Okay, moving on, so new business annual report. I did send you all a copy of the report. I didn't get any.
I'll make a motion to accept that. It's something that you're looking
As-
to get
as written,
accepted,
okay.
as written.
I second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I will submit the report.
You did a great job, Kristen.
Thank you.
Yes, you did.
Thank
Very
you.
nice job.
Okay, open discussion. Do we have any other things to discuss?
The only other thing that we mentioned at the last meeting is there was a concern with the YMCA and
Yes.
the lighting.
Yes,
And I've made a number of excursions there
yeah.
and never can fully see all of the lighting. It's never all lighted at one time.
Oh,
However,
I got a picture of it all lit.
I know,
He has
but
to
I
do
haven't
lumens
been able
test.
to catch it.
Oh, that's right, you have to, yeah.
But for a while there, I was going like 3 or 4 nights in a row, and Blue would be on or something, just the
Yeah.
whole lighting array was not completed.
They heard you were coming.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, Rick's gonna be here
Quick, dim the
tonight.
lights.
However,
watched the meeting.
however, that focus is on the building. Does it look good? In my opinion, no, it is not aesthetically pleasing to the building. However, it does not cast an abundance of light out on the street. You've got a bigger concern with the church. The church got this huge flood type
Yeah,
of fixture
they
that's
do.
out there that lights up and actually blinds you when you go by. It's very distracting. So that amount of light that they've got there is not offensive as far as the lighting level goes. And that was our concern, you know, with the lighting level at night and during the day. It is not offensive as far as the brightness goes,
But I still, I mean,
in my opinion.
the reason why they said it was for safety, because they said there wasn't enough light in the area, and with their members walking around, they didn't have enough light. And so they were trying to give more light to the sidewalks, if you remember this. And there's no light on the sidewalk, it's just, it uplights the building, and there's nothing down below. And we had talked to them because the way that they had put it, you could see the track lighting, and we didn't like that, and we wanted them to do something that was more historically,
Correct.
yeah,
Appropriate.
appropriate. So we had talked to them about putting some sconces on the outside to do some lighting with sconces, and they still haven't done that. And that was their concern, was they were doing this for safety, and yet now we've got the whole thing uplit, and, you know, and I'm sure it probably looks cool coming over the bridge, I don't know, you can see the building, but their main point, their reason for wanting to do it, which they told us, was for safety.
When you really need the
There's
lights
light.
is when you walk from the front over to past the pool, like that area right there
Right,
with the
and that's
bushes and
what-
whatnot,
that's
that's
where they were gonna
usually,
be
you know,
putting
dark,
lighting on the
the
outside
bushes, I mean, I'll just say
and
that
there's
again.
nothing, so-
Yeah, there's nothing there, so clearly.
Yeah. So I don't
It's
know.
I
still-
really think
still
the
not.
intent was to light up the building.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
And illuminate the building and do something,
Yeah,
I think that was the actual
Oh,
intent.
for sure.
probably.
Can you see the strips, the lighting strips from the
You
ground?
can.
And that was something they told us
That
you would not see.
You would not be able to
So
see,
they
you
agreed to
can.
do it, the uplighting, you wouldn't see the strip, we didn't want it to
Mhm.
go downward, cause then you would
would
see the strip. And they assured us we would not see it.
And you can still see it. I mean, it's not garish and, you know, really, but you can still
Yeah.
see the little bars and, you know.
And I think that goes back to what we've said a couple times to different people about accountability and about repercussions for.
What
Yeah.
can you do to go back and say this is not what you
Yeah,
said
you can't
would
just,
do?
Right.
I think there's just a long history of people just saying something because they think, oh, this is what they wanna hear, and that's kind of just insulting in general.
Well, and
because-
this is also something that when we meet with the ordinance committee, when we're going forward and combining the two, why we do need to have more oversight on some of these issues, and, you know, hopefully that
Well, we
will
need a
be-
partnership, we need a partnership with the administration as there is in our
Mhm.
neighboring cities.
Mhm.
And a respect
Mhm.
for what we do.
And an assignment of a commissioner to a particular project, so that it would become,
Like
Your
CPA
job.
does.
okay, exactly, so that you could better follow the process.
Sometimes it's easier to have one point person that you connect with rather than a commission, because that becomes another excuse, so I couldn't, you know,
Right.
and nobody was.
Well, there's no
whatever.
oversight, so
Yes.
work is being
Yes.
done,
Yeah.
and there's no one, you know, watching what the work is, and then once it's all said and done, and we have no means of, I don't know, finding someone, telling them they need to reverse it
Mhm.
and do what they said they were gonna do.
But the
There are-
historical commission doesn't have the authority to.
There are
That's-
other
that's the
historic
problem.
commissions.
No, I know, and that's what I'm saying, is when we do.
Like, where's
meet with
accountability
ordinances,
then? I could just,
Historic District Commission does, but not the Historical Commission. And we do need that, because
So when they merge, is that like,
There are
Okay,
some,
because
there's
it's
there
something
still
are,
that
only
goes
for
on.
the
That's-
district, but we can discuss that with them.
yes.
I don't think there's any shame either in bringing up the successes of neighboring cities, because that's more credence to the fact that we should have more of this.
one of the things that's very bothersome about the YMCA is that the YMCA received mass historic credits, tax credits, not once, not twice, but I believe 3 times, a minimum of twice. And within the last, what were the years, like 2016, I think was the last time they.
Yeah, I think
So it's pretty recent,
Mhm.
and so therefore, they do need to meet the, the interior.
Secretary of Interior
Secretary-
standards.
Exactly. So they do need to meet that, and that's why we held them accountable to what they were doing and that we didn't approve of their original plans, but we did want to work with them to make it more appropriate.
Well, CPA has that accountability because they have to follow Secretary of Interior standards for meeting, because it's tax money. And, yeah, we should, I mean, we do have the oversight for something, for those particular properties. We may not have oversight for all the properties.
We
but
have the oversight.
do
We sit
for-
with them, we talk with them, they can yes us
Yeah.
to death,
Which is-
and then we have no way of
We
holding
have
them
no
accountable
repercussions, there are
after the
no,
fact.
right, and that's what
And
we need to change.
There's no oversight while it's happening.
Right.
Who's gonna do that? You while you're at work, or perhaps me while I'm at work, you know? So that,
We have a couple
there's no
people that retire.
accountability, huh?
No, but I mean, we can plan for that going forward, and I mean, you know, it's not like, we can check in with them, it doesn't have to be during work hours, and, you know, there's always a way,
That's
but.
true.
And some checking in is better than no
But
checking in, I
we
suppose.
do have to be allowed to do that in the first place. The city has to give us the ability to do that, and as of yet, we don't have that,
And we need
so-
to be at the table when decisions are being
We
made.
do, and I think we, one of the people that we have to have more, I think, more of a working relationship with is the planning board, because the planning board is one of the biggest breakers of the city's master plan. They don't follow the master plan, and they're the planning board, and that to me is just, So-
And the zoning board, so they don't make
Zoning board,
changes
too.
that are
right,
unbecoming to
right.
the nature of
I
historic
think it helps
preservation.
when you have an administration that believes in cultural endeavors and believes in that, you know, those kinds of things. And then to have somebody who's either economic development / tourism or some kind of tourism authority, somebody who's, again, spinning that story that this is not just about a bunch of old buildings, it's about
Right.
the history of a city, the revitalization of a city. You know, there's so much of a bigger story that other cities have done it. We're not like even nearly as far off or as bad off as most people like to gripe about it. This city's quite great in many, many
It
ways.
absolutely is.
There are some cities that don't have half of the history or the sense of community. I do think that still exists, even if it's in pockets.
It really does.
You know, may not be the whole city as a whole, but there's definitely, we have strong neighborhood groups, and other cities don't have that. That's sometimes the gripe that other cities, local cities have, is that they're more focused on their downtown. We have really strong neighborhood groups. We have to stop focusing on the positives. And it does help when you have administrative officials who have the power, who are in tandem with you, who recognize that it's, you know, a human value thing. It's not just always about money, it's about human value as well.
Well, I think that the tourism thing has been kind of gone back and forth also between like the mayor and the city council.
Oh, I mean, yeah, a lot of it,
And,
it's like a ping pong game.
You know, and that's unfortunate because you really need to have,
Someone marketing it.
you do, we need that, and I mean,
That's
And people who either are familiar with the city or employed by the city, making new logos and promoting the city. And
I think that's why New Bedford has been very successful in the recent years.
they've had the last 3 mayors have all had a cultural agenda, and they've recognized that it has to do with, you just kind of owe something to people. It's not just always about, like, if you own a building in this city, like if you own a business, I mean, you owe it to the community to give back in some way.
Right.
If you're making money off of people, you owe them something, and whether that be sticking to your word, I'm not saying giving out free food, but there's got to be that sense of like the fabric of community, or else you just become a city full of people calling other people criminals and whatever other, you know, negative
but
terms.
you need to have an administration and a city council that can work together.
Yeah. Well,
And that's been, you know, that hasn't helped us either in our process, and I don't think it helps the city in the city's process. And I think you just need to have people that have more foresight, that can see the bigger picture, that can see why certain things go together. And I really believe that people in the community, for the most part, do not understand why historic preservation and economic success of a city go hand in hand. I don't think people get it. Some people get it. We have some developers in the city that have done exactly that. and they get it. But I think it needs to get out to the rest of the city. People need to understand why it's so important. It's not just about saving an old building, and people think, oh, well, why do we wanna save old buildings? There's a reason why. It's not just because it's an old building. So, I think, again, getting out to the neighborhoods and getting people to understand some of that helps, but it really needs to work in with, the administration, the city council, they all need to be able to understand it, because if you don't have the city aspect, the people that are in charge of running the city, if you don't have them understanding this, then, we don't have a leg to stand on, so. Anyway, I guess, is that it?
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, so our
Quite a
next
meeting.
scheduled meeting is going to be on Tuesday, July 16th, 2019 at 6:30 in this room. Can I please get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second that
Second,
motion.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you everyone and good night.
Thank you.
Terry's opposed.
Yeah.